Alright, so you're looking at the rear drum brakes for a 2004 Ford Ranger. This is 4-wheel drive, rear drum, 10-inch. There's a 9-inch and a 10-inch drum. If you're not sure what you have, just measure the inside of your drum. Because I'll ask you at the auto parts store. This is a Ford Edge, so it's not really an old. My guess is the 4-wheel drive is maybe a little bit longer. But here's the drum from the other side. If you measure from the inside here, you're looking at about 10 inches. Of course, if it was the 9-inch drum, then this would be an inch smaller. So that's how you measure to see. Just measure from one end to the other and see what it is. This is the drum off the other side, like I said before. So we're just gonna, I'm just gonna show you how to do drum brakes. I'm going to show you how to do this side. Both sides are going to be exactly the same. It's just a mirror image of each other. The best thing to do, I've been doing this for a long time and I still do this, is I get the car up off in the air, get the wheels off. I take one side off and I do it one at a time. I don't just strip them all down both at the same time, because if you forget something or forget which way the spring goes or whatever, you have the other side as a reference point to help you along the way. So you should be able to just pull the drum off. Now sometimes if your drum is really grooved on the inside, these do have a lip on them. They're definitely grooved up. And I believe these are the original drums. It's got almost 200,000 miles on, 198 or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and put new drums on this one. And actually the pads on this aren't too bad. But as far as the wear goes, I don't know if they've been replaced before. I kind of think they have, because this is an aftermarket spring it looks like. But the other side, the brake panel's falling apart. So that's not good. So we're going to go ahead and replace both sides. You should always replace both sides anyway if you're going to do brakes. Now's a good time. I've already kind of soaked this down with brake cleaner. It's a good thing. It'd be good to get a couple cans of brake cleaner when you do this. Soak it down, get all the brake dust off of it, kind of clean it up, and now's a good time to check your wheel cylinder here. Make sure there's no brake fluid seeping out of each side. It should be nice and dry. These are a little bit rusty, but they're not leaking anything, so they should be okay. Yeah, so we're going to get started on it. Like I said, keep the other side together and use it as a reference point. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but even the most seasoned mechanic can kind of forget where a spring goes or what hole it goes into or whatever. So we'll go about, and also there's a few specialty tools that kind of help this make it go a little bit easier. You don't have to have those. It just makes it go a lot easier, and it's worth it to get them. One of them, this is a brake adjusting tool. This adjusts the brake adjuster on the bottom. You don't really need this per se if you use a screwdriver. A lot of times I adjust these with the drum off and then put the drum on instead of going through the back. You're basically wanting to adjust them up till you get a little bit of drag and then leave them there. Or Ford says once you start to get drag, back it off about 5 to 8 turns, the actual adjuster in the bottom. Get a little ahead of myself there on that little stupid charger's going off. We will address that later. And then these help a lot for getting the springs off and on. I'll show you how to use these. These aren't real expensive. If you're just going to get the basic tools for doing rear brakes, I would just get these two. This is what pulls your retaining spring off. And it's got a little window in it so you can kind of see where it's at and turn it the right way. And this helps with the springs. So anyway, this is probably the least. You don't have to pick this up. It's just up to you. This is good if you're going to adjust the brakes without taking the wheel and drum off. But since we're already doing the brakes, we can adjust it from out here, get it pretty close, and then let the truck do the rest when you drive it. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started on it. We'll get you zoomed in here and kind of show you what I do and the alternatives, the tool that I use, and then maybe a different alternative if you don't want to invest the money in special tools. Shouldn't take too long to do these. These are pretty straightforward. They're all the manufacturers are pretty close to the same. But like I said, this is for a Ranger. I think it goes from '99 to 2012. They're pretty similar. But the basic idea and concepts I'm going to show you and the way to use the tools and stuff will work on almost all these drum brakes. It's hard to believe. I mean, this truck's an '04, but even new cars today are still being sold with rear drum brakes. I don't know. I kind of wish they were a thing in the past. Not because they're super hard to me. You know, I've been doing this a long time. It's not super complicated, but it's definitely harder than just taking the caliper off and compressing it and all that good stuff. And a lot of times the drums will stick to the pads, and then you try to pull the drum off, and it may even rip this mounting pin off, and then you got, you know, issues you could have when you do that. Sometimes the drum will get so stuck on there it'll screw up your wheel cylinder and stuff. So I kind of wish these were a thing of the past on cars, but unbelievably they're still using them to this day. So anyway, we'll get started on disassembling. What I'll do first is take these top springs off, and then we'll get the bottom spring, and then we'll pull them off and get going on it. So I'll get you closer into it, the action there, and then I'll show you how to use the tool. Alright, there's a couple of different ways you can take these springs off. If you were in a bind and you didn't want to buy the special tools, you could use a pair of locking channel locks and kind of lock onto the spring and pull them off. I did that for years starting out. Anyway, it's not the best way to do it. The best way is to get a pair of some of these, you know, one of these, and all you're doing is putting this cup over the center, and then this little notch right here will grab the spring and pull it off. So you just stick this over it, turn it, and kind of pry off, and that will take the spring off without having to fly anywhere and having to mess with channel locks. So we just do the same thing for this one, kind of pull it off. And what I'll do now, this is your parking brake spring cable. You can take some tension off the back of it, the bottom of it, kind of pull it up, and then it should pull off here. Kind of set that off to the side. We'll get the you don't have to do that. You can just pull this off, the pins off next, and then pull the whole thing off. But I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom spring off, and for that we will use the channel locks, just easier that way on that particular thing. And then we'll pull these two retraining springs off, but I'm going to back you up and kind of get you a better view. Alright, so I'm going to go, like I said, we got the parking cable here disconnected from the top. You go ahead and pull it off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and get this. There's a long spring that goes from one end to the other on the bottom here. This one's usually not too tight, so I'm going to just clip on to the spring itself. Ow, just touched my finger. And pull it off, and then I'll show you and kind of show you where it goes. I said it's not usually too tight, and then this one will be. We're having difficulty with our channel locks. Yeah, this one's usually not that tight, but who knows? Maybe I spoke too soon. Alright, this one is going to fight me. There we go. I'll kind of show you the spring, and then I'll show you where it goes on the actual. So here's the spring on the bottom, and all it does, you got one end that goes to the hole, the bottom hole. Here's your pad on that. Let's see. Here's your pad on that side, upside down. And you're looking at this bottom hole right here. Take this one out real quick. This is off the other side. Anyway, you're using this bottom hole, and it goes to both bottom holes on both sides. So now that that's off, there's no springs holding it on anymore except for the two retaining springs right there. And alright, so the next step is to take these off, these springs and plates. Which I use these tools, this tool here, get it in any auto parts store. If you don't have this tool, you could use a pair of pliers and just grab it and turn it. But since we have this tool here, we're going to use it. All you do is just grab it, push down, and turn it until the pin lines up with the plate here, and then it should pop right off. So now we're down to the point where this side will definitely come off. And what I like to do is just kind of lay my stuff out on the ground as I take it off. That way I kind of remember where things go. This is your brake adjuster here, and anyway, that fell off. So I kind of just lay everything out on the floor, how it comes off. You have your emergency brake bar here. This is kind of has a spring on it. Remember which side this spring goes on. I'll go ahead and put this in the wheel and buff it off a little bit and clean it up. Now, I did buy a new hardware kit, so we're not going to reuse any of this stuff. As far as, it doesn't come with this part here, but it comes with a new spring and all that. So what's going to happen now is we're going to pull this off, and the emergency brake pawl is still going to be hooked up. So what I do before I even take it off is normally I'll try to spread it a little bit while it's still on the truck. And sometimes, if you're strong enough, or if you get lucky, you can kind of take a big screwdriver and spread this little horseshoe clip, which it is starting to spread a little bit. And then once you get it spread open, it just slides out. There's a couple different ways you can take these off. You can also use a pair of pliers and kind of get on the end of it and then push up on it like that. And that just pushed it up pretty far. So there you can see it's almost out. And then once you get to this point, hopefully you can see that. Once you get to this point, just use a screwdriver and pull it off. And this is what it looks like. So that's what retains your parking pawl to the brake pad. Now you can pull this brake pad off. And this thing's pretty rusty. That should just slide off, but it's not because it's pretty rusty. So we have this pad here, and we'll just lay that down on the ground close to where it's supposed to be. Now you can take this off if you want. All you have to do is just clip on it right here and pull the spring up, and this will come off. I usually don't take it off. What I'm going to do is just get a quick buffing wheel and buff it off right here and lube it up a little bit. I did get new pins, brake pins for the back, so we don't have to worry about that. And anyway, I got all new brake hardware for it. And I believe it comes with the adjusting wheel and everything, so we're pretty good, pretty set up with it. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and then we'll pick back up and again, now's a good time to go ahead and get some brake clean. I've already done it, but I'll probably do it again and hit all this back here, get all the dust off and dirt or whatever else you have here, and just get it cleaned up. You know, a couple bottles of brake clean, you're good to go on both sides. Not on each, you know, half a can on each side or whatever. Just clean it all up, and then you should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and clean those other things up. All right, so the brake shoe on the the passenger side, you know, towards the rear, it's going to have the parking brake stuff on here. Now if you don't buy the parking or the brake kit, you're going to need to reuse this. This one sees in there, it's rusted. You could probably get it out and reuse it if you had to. Since I got the brake kit, I'm not going to mess with it. I'll just leave it in there. And on the bottom here, where your cable goes, you have this. Now you can take the spring off from here and kind of move it over, and then push this forward and back, take it off. Usually, if it's not rusted on there, you can just kind of push it forward and pull it all off as one thing. This one's not, but since I have all new stuff in my kit, I'm not going to take this off or worry about it. Again, this one's not seized on there, but there's no point in taking it off. This is the kit I got from O'Reilly's. It comes with everything. It's the Brake Pest H2335. Just tell them you want the rear brake shoe kit for your Ranger or whatever you're working on, and they'll have the kit there. And I think it's a good thing to invest in. They're not too expensive. I think that one was like $15. Comes with all new springs, the adjuster, all the little parts you need. And you got to think about it. This particular Ranger has 200,000 miles on it. How many times has this thing stopped and these springs, you know, been stretched back and forth? You know, quite a bit, and with that many miles on it. So it's not 100% actually necessary, but for the cost of getting the new stuff, it's worth it to me just to go ahead and buy the brake hardware kit and be done with it. So that's just that. So now I went ahead and cleaned this up. We did get new brake pins, so you can take those out from the backing plate. And all I'm going to do now is get the brake pad for the rear here and put this up on there, hook this in, and push that horseshoe in, and then take a pair of needle nose and clamp it. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to spray this down one more time, and I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll go ahead and set these brakes back up. Alright, so I hope you can kind of see what's going on here. I had a little issue with my electric in the garage. My compressor blew a breaker, and anyway, so I got the back pad up, and I put that parking pawl in there and put the little horseshoe clip in. Just slide the horseshoe clip in and then use a good pair of needle nose and close the end of it up so it can't slip out. And then I went ahead and pinned the pads onto the backing plate. I usually do that, and then I kind of manipulate the springs the way I want to. It just makes it easier to kind of hold the pads up there. Now the next step would be you have your pads on, and then you're going to need this on first, which is your parking cable. So go ahead and kind of put that on where it would go, because that goes behind the two springs. And then, like I said before, we got the new parts here, so what we're going to be using is this here. We got this is brand new, so we'll slit. That has like a little that goes in the hole behind underneath that parking pawl hole. And then we'll get a new spring here, which is the longer spring of the two top ones. And what it does is the spring goes through the hole on this, and then you go ahead and put the spring in the hole that it belongs in, which is, like I said, it's the second hole. It's in between your parking brake and your retaining spring. It's the only hole there. And you'll just slide this into the hole, and then it'll hold it there, and then we'll maybe put that spring up next. So I'll kind of show you that. I'll get it started, and then I'll kind of show you what I do. Alright, so this is kind of why you want to pay attention to how it comes apart, or you keep the other side off so you can see, together, so you can see what you're doing. Now I already know that I did the other side, but this goes first, your parking cable, and then this spring on your back, on the back of your pad goes second. And this is where this tool comes back into play. This is the end we took the spring off with, and this is the end that we can put the spring back on. You can see there's a little notch in there, and what that does is kind of notch onto this stud right here, and then you just slide the spring down. You just slide the spring down it. I'll kind of show you real quick how it works. And if you don't have this tool, again, you could use a pair of locking channel locks or something, but this makes it much easier. Sometimes it can be a little bit less safe if you kind of fall off of this, but just get up, put the spring on the rod like this, and then you're just going to hook on, use that hook that's there, that notch, and we're just going to let it ride, let the spring ride down. Now see, I was kind of off a little, so you're just going to let the spring kind of ride down that, and then it should hook onto there. Like that. Alright, so that's on there. And stuck on this a little bit. Kind of straightened it out. That's straightened out. So now we'll put this back in, and the spring goes away from the parking brake. This is the old spring. We got a new spring with the kit. If I can find it, which I can, it's right here. Now you're going to look at this, and this long end is going to go towards where the parking brake is, and then the short end is where the spring goes. Just put the spring on there, and then go ahead and start it in there. You want to get this in there before you compress both springs on there, otherwise you'll never get it back in. So we're just going to feed this through and kind of move everything out until we can get it back into place. And you want to be careful with your wheel cylinder here. You don't want that Just be careful that you don't want that falling apart. Alright, and now you got the shorter spring, and that goes in the very first hole on this particular brake pad, and then we're going to use that tool again and guide it back to its home. Go home, spring. And it's the same concept. You're just going to put the spring on the rod and just guide it home. Alright. So that's in. All the top is in. You got, don't forget, like I said, you got the rod that goes across to your parking brake. Now, before you put this down in here, you're going to want to put your lower spring in, because this goes on the outside of that spring. If you try to put this in first, then you won't be able to get this where it needs to go, because the long spring on the bottom, this one here, goes behind this part. So put this in first before you hook this up. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up for. Alright, so I lost my other drop light now. I'm losing, I don't have any power in the shop right now. I don't want to fix it till I'm done with this truck. So where I was at, I got the adjuster in there. Like I said, you want to lay everything out the way it comes out so that you know how to put it back in. So I got the adjuster back in, and I have this bottom piece in for the parking brake cable. All it is a spring. The spring goes around the other side. You just slide it in there, and you can pretty much manipulate that with your hand to get it started and get it in. And then your cable, will come down like this and hook into it, and then you just route your cable, route the cable around this, and then up to, and then it should have already been up at the top, because it's going to be behind those two springs. So that's that. So all that's really left now is we're going to put this red spring in the little hole. Just use a pair of needle nose vice grips to do that. And then you go ahead. Now I got new drums for this. Like I said, these drums have 200,000 miles on them, and they have a lip on the end, and they're pretty wore out. So regardless, have your adjuster pretty much closed all the way. It's got threads on this end, and you turn this wheel, and that's what adjusts it. So what you're going to do after you get that spring in, everything's set, and you're going to adjust it out until the drum goes on, and then you're just going to keep taking the drum off and adjusting it until there's a slight drag on the drum. And then once you get a slight drag on the drum, you should be good. Ford says once you get the slight drag, back it off like 5 or 6 turns. That's fine too. Just don't tighten it up to where the drum is dragging real hard, because then your brakes are going to be dragging while you're driving, and you'll wear them out faster. So anyway, that's how it's done. Just keep taking your drum off and on. If you don't want to keep taking your drum off and on, you can pull this plastic access panel out, little grommet out underneath here, and stick either the brake adjusting tool or the screwdriver in there and turn it, and then spin it while you're doing that, and then once you feel drag, stop. Either way works. For me, it's just easier when you're doing the brakes anyway to just do it with the drum off, and then just keep putting the drum back on. It only takes 2 or 3 times, and then you'll get enough drag on it, and then you can be done with it. So that's pretty much it with rear brakes on a Ford Ranger. The only other thing is the brake pad with the material that goes all the way to the top. That goes to the rear of the vehicle. I mean, you can't really mess that up because it has that pin in there for the parking brake. But sometimes some of the kits don't have the pin in there. And I've seen people put these on backwards. They'll put the fat in. The pad. See how this has got more of a. This one's got more metal showing here, and then your back pads. The pad goes almost all the way to the top here. That always goes to the back. But like I said, on this particular truck, or with these pads anyway, you can't really screw it up because the pin is installed on the back pad, and that's where the parking brake stuff goes. But like I said, some brake pads don't have that pin installed. You have to put it in yourself. So just be aware of that. That's pretty much it. I can't think of anything else to go over. Some people will grease where the pads meet on the backing plate. It's not a bad idea. I don't think it's actually necessary. But if you do that, don't use a lot of grease. You don't want grease getting on your pads and in between your drums and stuff. I normally don't do that. Some people swear by it, and some people say it's not necessary. Even Ford says it's not. I can't remember what Ford, the way Ford worded it was kind of weird, but it was only if you were having issues with something, then you can do that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's pretty much it. I gotta get this done so I can go get a new breaker and fix my garage here and get my power back. So if you have any questions, you can leave them down below or ask me, send me a message. My email is on YouTube. If you go to About, and then my email is right there if you want to email us for questions or whatever. It's probably the best way to get a hold of us. And anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one or down the road. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.